Those of you who watch this channel regularly will know that I recently rescued a smart roadster Brabus from certain death in a salvage yard, and that car is about to hit the road, I'm really pleased to report. This has the same name, but it's not entirely the same company. We'll come on to that in more detail soon, but 25 plus years after Smart launched, this is its current offering, the #1. And in this episode, having driven this car 2,500 miles over the last fortnight or so, I want to tell you what I like about it, what is smart about it, and maybe things that aren't so smart about it. You're watching The Late Brake Show, and I'm Jonny Smith. I remember as a journalist back in the late 90s, right at the turn of the millennium, driving the first right-hand drive Smart. And of course it was a city car, the 4.2. Developed originally by Swatch, the watch manufacturer, in partnership with Mercedes. They were a very quirky brand. Those cars have now been killed off, but of course they did partner. The Smart 4.4 had underpinnings from other cars. Mitsubishi was the first 4.4. And then Renault, the Twingo, was shared with it, rear-wheel drive, rear-engined, and there were electric Smarts. This is now an all-electric brand, and this is owned by Geely, the big Chinese manufacturer who bought Lotus, who bought Volvo. And in fact, if you've watched my Volvo EX30 review, this is fundamentally the same car as the EX30. Same batteries, same drivetrain, I'm pretty sure, and same software system. But the Smart #1, and it really is the #1, that's what they want you to call it, which is a bit cringy. I just tend to call it the Smart 1, because there are others coming imminently, which look like this on the screen. But I haven't driven those cars yet. This is a bigger car than you realise. This is not a small city car. They say it's an SUV, I'm going to say it's not. It's just a fairly high up crossover-y hatchbacky thing. But it is a bigger car than you expect it to be. This is more competing in the realms of the Kia e-niro, I think, and the Megane electric rather than Renault's 5. All around, actually, it's a really, really simply surfaced car. I cleaned it yesterday because the weather's been dreadful and we've been piling miles onto it for doing various Late Brake Show shoots. Every single panel surface is dead easy to clean. I know that's a bit of a dad comment, but it is really easy to clean. And you think it's going to be ultra aerodynamic because there's not a lot going on at the front, but it's not as aerodynamic as you think because it's quite flat and it's obviously higher off the ground than a normal passenger car because everybody seems to want higher up cars, which actually damages its efficiency. 273 mile range from a 66 kilowatt hour battery pack, and it comes up on the screen when you're 100% charged. It always says 273 miles, always. Even in winter like this, when clearly you're not going to get 273 miles, but I'll talk about that in a bit. Got the plastic cladding down there, which is a really popular thing to disguise the proportions of a car. I actually think there's a bit of Mini Countryman going on in this as well. But of course, Mercedes do still own a large proportion of the Smart company, and the design language at the front and the back look like the EQ series, that kind of weird ribbon bow almost. Very slippery. I actually think it looks better with a bright colour. This also has big, big tyres. I mean, these are 19s, 235, 45, 19s. These are on Continentals. And I do like the very flat, are they 3-spoke? I don't know. They look like, somebody said, I think it was Phil, the videographer, said they look like a camel's toe. Don't know what you mean, Phil. I quite like them though. Before I hit the main road, what I've found to be the case with Chinese but also Korean EVs is there's so much detail if you want it to do with the efficiency of the car. There's graphs, there's trip information, there's so many adjustments, you just have to find it. Sometimes it's not always that easy to find. But anyway, the reason why I'm saying this, You can choose to obviously not charge your car 100%. You can schedule your charging time. You can adjust your temperature before driving. You can make sure that the car preheats the battery before getting to a rapid charge point to allow quicker charging. I'm averaging 34.3 kilowatt hours per 100 miles. And the trip data, I've done a lot of miles actually. I've done 2,800 miles pretty much. Driving time 74 hours. I've regened 144 kilowatt hours. My average consumption has been 29.4 kilowatt hours per 100 with an average speed of 37, all that stuff. I must say at the top of this feature, I've only driven the Smart #1 in cold temperatures. I got the car when it was just going into winter, and so I've experienced a lot of cold temperatures, and I've also done the thing which is the hardest job for an electric car: sustained motorway speeds in nearly sub-zero temperatures. And me and Phil, the videographer, have done that a lot. We've driven fully laden down to Kent for a Barnfind. Then we've driven up to Scotland, Glasgow, for a car cave and a Barnfind. And in both those Barnfind instances, what I've actually done is I've used it to tow Barnfind cars out. Now there's a good poke, I think, from the Smart. This is rear-wheel drive, rear motored, so independent rear suspension, 268 horsepower, 250 something pounds-feet. So it does 0 to 62 in 7 seconds or thereabouts. So it's similar to actually a Kia Soul electric car that I had a long-term test relationship with. And in many ways, actually, as I'm driving it, it has a similar feel in terms of the damping and in terms of the road comfort to that Soul. And it also has a boot which is smaller than you're expecting it to have, the same as the Kia Soul electric. So a top speed of 112 miles an hour, which is pretty much irrelevant, but a WLTP range of 273 miles. Whenever you pull it off charge and it says 100%, it nearly always reads 273, 272. But you don't get that, and I don't think you'd even probably get that in the summer. So it's a sort of, I think, a software thing where it's actually falsely optimistic. And maybe it's the same when it comes to temperature, because although this has got a heat pump and it does deliver heat without eating into your battery range, it seems to say it's giving you 21 degrees of heat when it doesn't feel like 21 degrees of heat. It feels more like, I don't know, 19. So you tend to put it a little bit higher. But of course, if you want to get the maximum range out of an EV, you tend to go easy on the cabin heating and you go big on the steering wheel and the bum heaters. So now under here, this clamshell bonnet which comes all the way around the edge, just like a Mini, I think, very similar to a Mini or a Range Rover. A sea of plastic. You've got your screen wash under this little trapdoor here, I think. Yeah, there you go. There's your screen wash to top up, nice and easy. There's your coolant right there for the batteries. But under here, a very small token little trough. It's not as bad as some of them that I've seen. Quite similar to the Korean cars, the Kia and Hyundais and things. There is a trapdoor. Are you going to keep anything in it? Not really. I actually am not keeping the cables in here. I'm keeping them back there because there's a really nice place for them back there. In fact, the cables are really cool. Bear with me. Sexy cables. That is not something I was expecting to ever talk about with the Smart #1, but the shape of these handles are so good and ergonomic. They're really beautifully done. That shape is repeated on the interior parts, like the kind of squash donut air vents and stuff like that, but they're really, really good. The charger flap, less cool really. I mean, you've got these rubber bungs which just hang down. You can't see in the dark. There's no light in there like I think there should be. But charging times are good. 150 kilowatt rapid charge DC when you're out and about wanting to get 10 to 80% in under half an hour. 3 hours, you can use the AC 22 kilowatt onboard charger, which is really useful. So in under 3 hours, it'll do 10 to 80%. Or you can just stick it on like this office charger, 7 kilowatts, and do it over the course of a day. I've had no problems with the car talking to any of the rapid chargers or anything like that. And there's a cool display inside where you can see what's going on. One thing I would say though is that I just wish that was, like I said before, I wish that was in there or that was in there. It would just be a bit more smart, a bit more quirky cool, because that's quite quirky. And actually, I've just noticed in the window there, there's a smart logo. There's weird little smart icons on the glass all around. So it's like they're trying to be really quirky, but ultimately, it is quite a sensible car, isn't it? Oh, and talking of charging, inadvertently, I have driven this car with 0% range, 0% battery charge twice in the snow. Not intentional at all. During the course of various road trips we've been doing over the last few weeks. There's a few little videos I took to explain. This is interesting. So I stayed overnight on the top of a hill. It's a massive amount of snow, it's cold. It's 2% charged. I'll try and show you. It's 2% charged. I got it home all the way from Scotland last night and I just thought I'll pull up. But I've got to get to a rapid charger, which is really close by. But it's cold. I'm worried. So 4 miles to get to 3.3 mile rapid charger. It's very snowy. It's very cold. Not ideal for EVs in terms of coldness, but I'm confident. Bizarrely, total lack of panic from the system. No alarm bells sounding, nothing like that. Just has no range, and I've been driving like this now for 3 miles. I am a little worried because it's cold. Well, bloody hell. Here's proof. Look, I've done the distance. I arrived. I'm here at Billie Jean's Cafe for, there's a whole line of Osprey new rapid chargers. Luckily, plenty of free ones. It says 0%, 1 mile of range. I've never recharged at 0%. I've never driven a damn car at 0%. I'm so happy. There's always a bit of energy in cars when they say they don't have anything, if you're extremely careful. But nobody wants to run that kind of gauntlet with an EV, I don't think. So it's going to be interesting to see how fast this charge is. I know seasoned EV people will have probably run it down to 1% or 0% before, but I haven't. Of course, you can't preheat the battery pack on the way to a DC rapid charger when you're running such low percentage, but ordinarily that's what I would do, and there is a button in the Smart to do that. One element I do really like is this part of the roof line of the #1. The Smart logo is the same as it always has been, and it sits there, but this almost reminds me of, I don't know, either a tortoise's shell, and as a tortoise owner I'm particular about tortoises, or it does look a little bit like Vauxhall's Adam little super mini car that I thought was a pretty cool looking car, but I think it lived in the shadow of the Fiat 500. Anyway, one thing they've overlooked, I think, and a few people brought this to my attention, is that could have been the charging flap, or that could have been down there, or they could have done something a bit more smart with that. Round the back, hark, there's a wiper. I know it sounds ludicrous, there's so many EVs that I review that don't have rear wipers, and in winter you notice. So this has a wiper. Really similar light bar to the front of the car, and it does have various little signatures at the front and rear when you lock and unlock it. And I think you can modify the signatures, or you can scroll through different animations. I'll show you on screen if there's a way of doing it that isn't in the daytime. And then the boot. You release the boot down here. Electric boot, which I don't care about particularly, but it's popular these days. Now the boot, 323 litre boot, is actually quite a small boot for the size of the car. However, what Smart will let you do, and I've done it a lot when I've been loading up with Barnfind stuff, is you can move the rear seats forwards and backwards, and you can drop them flat. So you can decide, do you want legroom in the back? And if you do, okay, smaller boot. And if you want no legroom, like a Renault 5, you can put them all the way forward, and thus you've got a bigger boot with a carpeted drop there. But what's extra good, and it really is better than most cars I've ever experienced, is although you've got a small boot floor at the top, which is a bit confusing, there's a space down there which is way bigger than it needs to be for the charging cables and stuff. In fact, it is like a two-stage boot. Contraband down there, Waitrose up there. There's lashing points, and there's a couple of little tiny holes on the side here, cubby holes. There's a first aid kit in here and a Lumi jacket. And you've got tethers at the back there. But a lot of the rival cars have got bigger boots. Take the Kia e-niro, for example. That's got a much bigger boot. This is definitely a car that's geared or calibrated for a comfortable ride. The ride quality, I think, is really good. The handling is average. This is not a car you're going to enjoy chucking into corners. It's not playful, or I've not found it to be playful. But driving it on the motorway, acoustically really quiet. I'll do a 70-mile-an-hour blip in a minute, but it's been really good for that. Thoroughly relaxing, and the combination of that with the Beats audio system, it's been a podcast. It's been an absolute podcast master for just eating the miles up whilst listening to your favourite musical podcast. But I've been getting something closer to 220, 230 rather than 270. You've got 3 driving modes there. You can stick it in sport, comfort or eco, and I have defaulted to eco, but when you really want to step on it, like so many EVs, it'll crack on. Steering, you can adjust all this stuff. In fact, I think I'll go to the car setting here. Yeah, you can adjust the power steering here. The steering defaults to being quite loose and quite light, so I stick it in heavy if you want a bit of feedback. And again, regen, low, medium and high, but you can also have one pedal driving, which I actually end up preferring on this. I've probably done, I don't know, 1,500 of those miles with the one pedal driving, or S pedal as they call it. And that's because when you come off the throttle and go back on the throttle, there seems to be a bit of a no man's land dithery patch where the car's trying to decide, oh, do you want me to coast or do you want me to recoup the energy? Whereas one pedal driving, it's much more, I don't know, decisive. Headlight system, really good. Love the headlights. I can't find automatic dipping. It does do it. There, adaptive. Oh, maybe I've just found it now that I'm doing a review on it. That's embarrassing. Turn in circle. Pretty good. I found that to be the case with a lot of rear-motored EVs, even on 19s like this. It'd be interesting to see whether or not the car's even more comfortable on 18s, but to be honest with you, I find it to be really comfortable. The only electric car around about this price point that I've found to be more comfortable was the Citroen EC4. I want to call it the C4E, but it's the EC4 because the damping on that's exceptional. But I have to say, if I was driving this or looking to drive and own this, as with the case with all cars, irrespective of whether they're electric or not, I would try all the other offerings, and it's hard to deny, unless you value backseat space on a daily basis. Something like the Renault Megane Electric or the Renault 5 even would be difficult to ignore. Just admiring those sleek roof bars as I get inside. Oh, the first thing you notice about the Smart #1 actually is here. It's got completely frameless doors, which look kind of cool, but in a practical family car, and I know lots of cars have this, Teslas, you name it, I found them to stick onto the seal when it freezes or when there's snow. And it makes me think, oh, I don't know if I want that in a family car. In a coupe, yeah, I get it. In a sports car. So when you're in the Smart, lots of black and white. I know I've talked about colour, but this really reminds me, I had a massive deja vu with these pieces of white on the seats and this white kind of pearl finish, the antichrist of piano black almost, white going around the dash here. What does it remind me of? Vauxhall Ampera or Chevy Volt, range extender EV from like 2012, 2011. I had a Chevy Volt and I loved it, and I loved the interior design. It's proper like Generation 1 iPod. This sits quite high and it's quite slender, which means the footwells feel really open. I've got long legs and my knee, there's a little rest here for your knees, and it's nice. And underneath that, I've got my scraper, and I've actually got a selection of old bulbs from a 2CV project car. But there's a really deep storage well just down here. That bit there is where you put your phone. It's a rubberized wireless charging pad, USB-C's ×2, cig lighter socket, and then this one here, 2 cup holders with like, basically it's a really practical, I think it's to put your phone in. Yeah. But this one here, back here, is a really deep well, and this actually has a cooling facility, so you can put drinks in here or a sandwich to keep it cool. And there's a little slot to put your charging card for your charging tariffs, which is kind of useful. I haven't used it though, because I jump in and out of so many different cars. There's a really slim speedo just here, and I'll talk more about this as I drive, but I found it to be just the right size, and the sort of off-white background and all the different characters and fonts. I like the icons, and I quite like they're not too in your face, and there's a head-up display, which I also really like. And although I like the black and white, I don't think there's any funky fabrics, which to me feels more smart as a brand, right? I'd want some funky fabrics. I mean, look at the Renault 5's mottled yellow and grey and black offerings. They look great. I want a bit of colour and a bit of recycled fibre going on in here. The car is on as soon as you get in, by the way, which I know it's trying to be helpful, and I know a lot of other cars do it, but it turns things like the heating on straight away, and sometimes I just want to put something in and shut the door, and then you have to physically lock it. It won't lock itself again. I can't work out why. And you'll hear the heat pump strike up, because it has a heat pump as standard, and it really makes a loud noise, like a cooling fan on a car radiator. Oh, and all smart #1s have a big pano roof, which seems to close automatically, I guess for insulation at night, or when you lock it, or heat. Stop sunlight from coming in. I'd like it to stay open if I ask it to stay open, but it's a massive toggle switch. There, massive. It's one of the very few chunky toggle buttons, because there's not many other buttons. You will have already noticed that. The screen has a couple of buttons underneath for things like defrost, the air conditioning modes, the driving modes. Everything else is on this touchscreen. And the touchscreen sits on a plinth like so many of them do now. I have found a couple of things to be quite difficult to find. The climate always sits at the bottom permanently unless you use, I believe, Apple CarPlay. I have Android Auto and haven't had a problem. But I quite like the layout of the stuff, actually. It's got this weird little fox who appears in almost everything that you do. So you go into climate like that, there's a fox sitting in a chair, shivering because it's cold outside. So like I said before, the boot space is increased or decreased by moving the seats forward and backwards. This is me sitting in this position with the seat all the way forward, basically useless. But it can go this far back, so you can see the difference in adjustment from that 60-40 split there. And this is me sitting behind myself. I'm 6'3". Tons of headroom, like loads. Adequate knee room considering I'm tall and obviously sitting behind myself. Flat floor car because it's on a dedicated EV platform that Geely made. And also you can see you've got Dr. Dre's Beats, which I didn't mention at the front. The little speakers that are on the A-pillars, they actually light up. In fact, the whole dash has a silhouette light around it, a mood light, which you can change the colours on. And although it sounds cheesy, This one seems to be more interesting than most I've seen. So whilst the audio is really good with Dr. Dre's Beats, I think it's the 12 speaker system, the sub in the back is one of the reasons why that false floor is sitting there. So maybe you can blame Dr. Dre for a lack of boot space on this car. So it's not class leading in boot space, but it is really good for legroom. I can see way over, and this is tapered, so I can see either side. It's pretty good visibility, and that pano roof really makes it. This doesn't feel as lively as its weird twin brother, the Volvo EX30. I think the steering was quicker on the EX30 and a little bit more lively, and the damping was firmer, but not less comfortable. Well, I have to say, I love the steering wheel. I love the thickness of the steering wheel, I love the size of it, I like the look of it. That little illuminating smart badge at night's reassuring, the buttons feel good. Those buttons there are really, really helpful. I just like the dash design, actually, I do like it. I just wish that frunk had more space in it to balance the lack of space in the boot for the size of the car. So now I'm going to knock it into reverse with the little knob. I mean, you remember Tesla when they first brought out the Model S, they nicked a toggle from Mercedes. That's fine. It's just that because that's there where you'd expect wipers to be, I do feel myself going for wipers, like to do intermittent wipe, and they're here. Twisting the knob to do wipers, pressing it to do washer, a flick of that switch to do rear wiper, and then indicators, and then somewhere's the lights, I don't bloody know. And the fundamental difference between this and the Brabus version is the Brabus is four-wheel drive twin motor. So there's a motor at the front, and it does 0 to 62 in 3.7 seconds. So it's quick. And that is 62. It's weirdly quick, the Brabus. I mean, yes, it's Brabus, but I mean, smart Brabuses, which have been collaborating now for what? 20 years? Yeah, 2003. They were never quick cars. They were engaging cars and they were fun. This is just darn quick, because it doesn't have to be. You've got your driving mode here, which in the ordinary Smart doesn't have Brabus mode. This has Brabus mode. And that unlocks all of that power, which has got more torque, considerably more torque, than the AMG GTR twin turbo V8 monster. Do you remember that car? Yeah, this has got so much torque and power. It's ridiculous. Right, the Brabus #1 is recognised at the front end by some subtle things, one of which are these two nostrils here at the top. They sort of remind me of the Audi A1 Quattro or the S1. So you've got that, and then down here you've got this red line accent chin spoiler with a Brabus badge stuck on there. And maybe it's red in there as well. That's it. 19-inch different looking wheels, no ride height difference, apparently slightly firmer, and these are shod in different tyres, Dunlop, Sportmax, SP. The wheels look worse, in my opinion. Down here, on top of the original cladding from the non-Brabus #1, has Brabus gloss stuck on bits with a red line on it. I say stuck on because they are stuck on. This rear spoiler is Brabus specific. It's an extended piece with two big louvers in there, so you can see it from that angle, but from here you can't really tell. And then down here at the back, you've got, like the front, like a little chin lip add-on with a red line and a Brabus badge. It's all a bit subtle and stuck on. Because Brabus is classed as the luxury performance brand, there is some Brabusy luxury stuff going on inside. I'll show you that now. In here, yeah, you've got a nice steering wheel with a microfiber or kind of faux suede on the outside, leather on the inside, red stitching and red LEDs, Brabus logo there, and it's stitching on the headrests. I miss the white interior, but there's no doubt, having lived with it for quite a long time, I find that this layout, the head-up display and the controls, pretty pleasant. I'm used to having a big tablet now. I mean, and by today's standards in a lot of cars, that's actually not that big. That's industry standard. Yeah, 422 horsepower, 584 Newton meters. I mean, seriously, bugger me. I've mostly been driving this car in winter when it's damp and cold. The car will slither about, it really will. It's too quick for the almost the traction control systems, and you'll find it scrabbling. The tyres are different to the original tyres. These are on Dunlop SPs, and I do wonder whether or not it probably needs even sportier tyres to get this power and torque down. But the car's a tad firmer. Brabus say they've firmed the front end up to compensate for the fact that it's obviously got extra weight in the front, that electric motor, but it still has a comfortable ride like the #1. I like the ride quality of it. I'll show you on screen now what the car was recording when I charged it, when I got into it this morning, 100%. But yeah, basically, it's not an accurate reflection. And this has got the same size battery as the normal #1, which I think is 62 kilowatt hour usable size. And whereas I might get 240, 250 if I'm really lucky in the #1, this one I won't get 200. I'm almost certain. And for me, the whole point of a Brabus is, I guess, power and flinging it around if you're going to buy the Brabus model, which incidentally is 4.5 grand more than the big battery rear wheel drive model. When am I going to use it? I mean, I'm squirting it and it is fun. That torque is sledgehammer. But I'd want this car because it's more of a family orientated car. I'd want it for range, really. Maybe I'm not enamoured by the styling of it, the extra Brabus styling, but then Brabus didn't do wild styling on any of the Smarts, did they? Or did they? They certainly had better wheels. The Brabus wheels were a statement. These wheels are not a statement to me. So you're losing your range because you've optioned an extra motor with more power. And if you drive it in Brabus mode, you're clearly never going to get anywhere near the WLTP, and that's your call as the driver, the buyer, the consumer. I'm left thinking that 4.5, 5 grand extra that you'd pay for the Brabus, you could just get a second-hand OG smart Brabus like the one I've bought. I've driven this car this car came with 300 miles on the clock. I've done about 400 miles in it. Within the first 24 hours of owning it, that passenger door retractable handle stopped retracting, and it's come up on the screen with a hidden door handle is abnormal, please contact dealer. I forgot to say, that happened in my yellow car. Only on that door, only on the British passenger side. I don't know what it's about. Very odd. In terms of performance though, this is as fast as I'd want a daily driven EV to be. An EV that's focused around being a kind of commuter slash family car. One thing's for certain, this is definitely the best smart on the motorway that I've ever driven. Just going to do, I'm in sport mode, I'm just going to do a quick 0 to 62. Do not press the pedals at the same time. I thought it might have launch control, but it doesn't. There you go. I mean, like I say, it's no like Tesla madness. It's no Volvo XC40 recharge. That thing's rapid, but it's quick enough, I think. Late 6s, early 7s to 62 is fine for a car which does predominantly commuter stuff. You need a bit of punch to overtake now and again, but the controls aren't that communicative, but it is comfortable. So if you value comfort, ride over handling, this does all right. I didn't really talk about the quality, but actually the quality of this, you know, it's more Mercedes-Benz than you realise. I think they've tried to make it feel good quality, and Smarts historically always were good quality because they weren't the cheapest cars. You know, they weren't trying to be amazing value. They were trying to be good quality and well crafted, but also kind of interesting and slightly different. And that's what Smart's still trying to do, although I wish this was a little bit more different. We're in a this thing's competing in a very crowded genre. Very crowded indeed. I feel like Smart have played it safe. Now, literally safe, it's a 5-star Euro NCAP car, and Smart has always been a safe brand. Those little 4.2s were always really safe, contrary to belief. But what I mean is, the #1 is trying to be a bit of everything, but without being niche, because Smart's gone away from being niche, and I think that is a bit of a shame. Too many car manufacturers are trying to do everything really well. And in actual fact, what happens is you end up with a car that could be a little bit more charismatic than it is, and that's what I feel like this is. It's not class-leading boot, it's not class-leading in terms of range, and it's not the coolest, most interesting, wow looking thing. I mean, ask hardcore Smart people. They don't like it. Will they like it? Perhaps they will. Look at what happened to Mini at the beginning of the millennium. Hardcore Mini people hated the Mini 1 and the new BMW revamp of the Mini. Now, they're cool with it, I'm sure. I should think that's what's going to happen with this car. But let me know what you think about the £38,000 Smart #1 in the comments below. I welcome it. And if you want to watch my other reviews of other electric cars, there's a whole playlist. And if you want to support this channel via Patreon and get early access to videos like this one, there's a link in the description. Go and have a look. I won't force you though. Thanks for watching.